Warning, spoilers are ahead for the game being discussed. If you have not played this game, continue under your own advisement. About 3 weeks ago, a game that has not been as divisive as any other game in recent history was released by the name of Dragon Age: The Veilguard. And I'm going to start by saying, as you can tell by the title, I'm not someone who mirrors a lot of the internet's view on this. I'm also someone who's played God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok, and I think God of War as a franchise is one of the top 3 ever made. So comparing the combat of the Veilguard to God of War is not taking it lightly. And I believe if you were to swap out the characters of God of War and swap Rook with Kratos, these games would almost be mirrored, and you would not be able to tell the difference. Yes, God of War might be slightly more refined. The gameplay at its core is pretty much the same, and Veilguard plays like Ragnarok. So for those people who tell you that the gameplay is repetitive, tedious, whatnot, and they will tell you that God of War is a great game, then you're parroting what everyone else says because you want to have a hive mind and you have not played the game. And for the people who say the story is trash, they believe that it's trash because of Taash, and I'm not arguing that Taash's story is pointless in the game, because I believe it is. It's a Dragon Age game. There's no reason to have modern terms of being non-binary in the game, which there are 2 people, one with a side character. If you did not know, yes, someone who plays the game would know that there are 2 characters, at least. Maybe there's more, but there's one that you specifically do side missions for. And I believe that that specific scene is right after Taash tells you that she is non-binary. So it's kind of stupid that they have politics back to back, but they are there. And I'm someone who does not like politics in video games, especially in one where you're using modern political ideologies that would not even matter back then. But I'm going to get into more detail with this, and we're going to start out with the story of Taash first. I'm going to talk about the most delicate topic first, because this is where I think I can create a bridge with a lot of people who hate this game. Taash's story is absolutely trash. Ironic that her name is similar to that. Every other character has meaningful content. Davrin has the best story arc of all the characters, where he's trying to preserve griffins. They are on the brink of extinction. I think there's 12 left in the world. I think that's what it said in the game. Play his story to recapture them. Next would be Bellara, and her story is more personal. She's trying to save the elven people from this entity that is killing them and trying to take over, doing very bad guy stuff. Then you have Nev. Her story is just your standard story. There's a bad guy she's chasing from her past, and you have to help her take down this person. Nothing political, nothing bad. It's the story that you would find in any other game. Then we have Lucanus, who is similar to Bellara, and how he's trying to save his city from evil, where she's trying to save her people from evil. But they are both pertinent to the story, and they genuinely feel like they develop as characters. You see them more personally, you help them, and they help you by being part of your team. It's great story writing, in my opinion. The last 3 are where we get into the more personal, and if you want to use the word selfish story arcs, Emmerich himself pretty much just tells you that he fears death and he wants to become a Lent. And that pretty much is what his story consists of. There are choices that you can make where you decide that or not, but I won't say anything more than that. You have to decide whether he wants to be a Lynch or not. But at least for him, he is not doing it so personally and so selfishly that he's choosing himself. No, he asked for your opinion, he asked for your input, and he values your opinion because you become friends to this point. So while it is a personal story and there's a big giant machine that you are trying to take down that you will eventually learn about, it's a double arching story to where he has his own personal motivations, but for the greater good of the world, you are also helping him defeat this monstrosity, if you will. And then we have Harding and Taash, and it's funny that these 2 can end up dating in the game, which I found ironic because their stories are by and far the most selfish, the most personal. For Harding, she acquires a new power from the old people, the Titans, and She's trying to understand these abilities, and that is pretty much her story arc completely. She gets magical powers, and it's like a Life is Strange game. Ironic, I know, ironic. And then you have Taash, who's entirely motivated by being non-binary, and it's all about finding her identity, finding her past. It is by far, if Harding's story is like a 5 or a 6, then Tasha's story is like a 1 or a 2, and I am not even kidding you. Tasha's story is very, very bad. And it's just not her story. When you hang around Taash in this game and you're doing her mission, she will over tell you, oh, Dragon King is such a stupid name because dragons don't have kings, they have queens. And it's like, bro, there could be a literal male who is a dragon whisperer, and he tells the dragons, hey, I'm your king. And guess what? Kings or queens are determined by what they identify as, male or female, Taash. You should learn this since this is your entire story. But no, she doesn't. And this is a constant theme. I'm thinking of Emmerich when she calls him a death mage, and he tells her, I don't want to be called a death mage. And she just doubles down and says, well, guess what? You are a death mage. Hammers the point further home later that he didn't want to be called a death mage because you fight a person who is an actual death mage in his story arc. They literally steal souls. They kill people to get their souls to become more powerful. Whereas Emmerich would be like an alive mage to where he talks with the dead. He doesn't make them dead. But she never apologizes for it. No, she doesn't. She doubles down. And when you see Emmerich and his story arc later, what a death mage actually is, it just hammers home in your head that she was very, very rude. And she didn't accept Emmerich for being just a mage. And the one other instance that I can think of that I remember through the game that stood out was when she was trying to get Neve to change her appearance. Neve lost her leg by going through a portal or something like that while she was chasing someone, chasing a bad guy, because that's what she does. And Taash tried to convince her to put jewelry on her leg to make it look better and whatnot. It's like, you're not accepting Neve for the way she looks. And it's like, I played with Neve a lot. I played with Neve mostly. I mean, she was the first character, one of the first characters you encounter that you can play with. So, I mean, you're gonna already take a liking to her just because she was there from the beginning. Not one time that I think, you know what? You know how I want to improve Neve? Put jewelry on your prosthetic. This is Taash, who doesn't want people to identify her as a woman. They want her to identify her as non-binary, which technically, if you really want to get political, if you're non-binary and you don't feel man or woman, then you're saying that you kind of feel both. So saying you feel you're a she or he would not be wrong in either regard. But tomatoes, that's semantics. People disagree with that, whatever. The point is that you're making these people, giving them labels and tags and whatnot, and you never apologize for it as a matter of factly. That's the tone that you get with it, and she doesn't think about it. And you can't talk to her about it. It's like, hey, Emmerich, or hey, Taash, you remember when you said that about Emmerich? And now you identify as non-binary, maybe you should go apologize to him. No, you can't do that. Or you can't interrupt her when she's trying to change the appearance of Neve and tell her, why are you trying to change the way she looks? She looks fine. Why do you care? And that's the problem with Taash. Taash is very, very selfish. Her story arc is selfish. The way she conducts herself is selfish. She is not a likable character. From how she always has to point out the Dragon King is not a king because it's a queen, and it turns out that it is a dude, that to when she points out the flaws of everyone else and calls people what they don't want to be called. I genuinely believe that if you remove Taash from this game entirely, the game would not have received the negative criticism that it did. And I don't understand why game developers do this. You can release your game with no politics in it and people say it's trash, and then you know you got a trash game. Or you can release your game with politics, people not buy it because of the politics, people say it's trash, and by word of mouth no one else buys your game, and this could have all been avoided if you would have just not had politics in it, and then you would know if your game was actually trash or not because there's no politics. So if people say it's bad, then it's probably just a bad game. So don't put politics in video games is the point of this. If you put politics in video games, you're already distancing yourself from some people. You are already having the starting point of your game being at a 5 out of 10. And you have to work your way up from there. You can't talk bad about Taash. You can't insult Taash. You can't tell her to be more of a team player and stop being so selfish and focus on saving the world. Focus on taking down these gods. Don't focus on whether you want to be non-binary or not. I'm just gonna leave it there. Her story is trash, and I agree with you that it drags this game down. But let's get into what I feel like makes this game stand out among anything else. The thing that people point out with this game is they say that the combat is repetitive, but I genuinely disagree. Throughout this game, I started with the initial build where I didn't really have a lot of weapons, shields, whatever. Shields are pretty much the same throughout, but they don't offer anything unique other than abilities. But through like the first third of the game, I was learning how to parry. I was having a parry based build because I didn't have anything good. And then the next 2/3 of the game, I spent the game on a big sword build, heavy weapon, where I was all about stunning them. And this game is called Stagger, and I had a build to where I could 2 or 3 hit an enemy and they would stagger and do a critical hit, rinse and repeat that. That's 2 out of 3 builds that I had in the game. And the final build that I had was a lifesteal build. It was all about defensively. Once your health reaches a certain point, you get straight defense perks. You get lifesteal at all times with the sword, which you find later in the game, which ironically is the Taash portion with her final part. That's one of the best weapons in the game in my opinion. I was playing on normal, so I can attest to higher difficulties. I imagine on higher difficulties, it may not be as viable. I wasn't doing any min-max type anything. I was just, whatever I picked up, I was using it. And when I picked up that build, I did not die a single time after that. And that is 3 different play styles in the game. This game plays very similar to God of War Ragnarok. This game plays similar to The Witcher, not entirely to The Witcher, but I compare it to The Witcher and the questing system. Later I'll get on the quest. That's why I feel like if you like God of War, there's no way that if you're playing with a melee build you cannot like this game. That's why I'm literally dumbfounded by people who say that this game is boring in the combat system. I genuinely would want to see your gameplay, to see how you're playing this game, to see how it's boring. This is one of those games where this year, similar to Rise of the Ronin, anytime there was combat in the game, I always engaged in the combat. I never ran away from it because I didn't find it boring. I didn't find the combat boring at all. But then I see people talking about how it's repetitive and boring, and I'm dumbfounded. I literally don't understand the logic because I think God of War is the greatest game of all time, 2018. Greatest game ever. And it plays similar enough to that to where you could replace each other thing within it and would be the same. However, one of the downfalls to the combat is that we're going back to the Mass Effect 1 days. There's this statue at the lighthouse and you have to assign abilities to each character and it just becomes a micromanagement mess. That is, if we're not talking about Taash's story, that is the worst part of this game. The micromanagement that is needed to assign mods, and I forgot what they're called specifically, but you assign mods to their armors, to their weapons, and they add boosters for you and your party. That is the worst part of the gameplay, and I'm going to be honest with you, I avoided that. If I was feeling like it, I would assign 1 or 2 mods here or there and I would be like, alright, I'm bored, I'm going to fight stuff again. And that's what I did. But this game is genuinely fun when it comes to the combat, and the combat alone is what will make me give the rating of what it is. The story in this game is what I would consider a God of War story. There are 2 gods in this game that you must face. They want to essentially take over the world. They want them to worship them. They want to be the new gods. And the story is similar to God of War. Like God of War 3, I would say, where Kratos is going on his revenge to kill the gods. That's what this story feels like. And I feel like that's what the developers took their motivation from. It has very similar similarities to it, and this is a double-edged story too. This is why people who want to talk about the story saying it's bad, they are picking and choosing one or two things. The romance scenes, for instance, they say that, oh, this is what some young adult novelist would write in a book or something. They are talking about the romance scenes when they're talking about the story. And how delusional do you have to be to talk about a romance scene and not actually talk about the story itself? Because the story itself is like God of War's story. You're trying to take down the god, but they'll combine Taash's story and the romance scenes, and that's their deciding factor of this being a bad game, which makes absolutely no sense to me. The story in this game is really, really good. It's really engaging without Taash's story. And if you want to say that the young adult writing, but specifically they say Belara is the one where she's stammering, going into a room, and she's talking about how she's trying to find the words to say she loves you or whatever. And if you played the game, I'm telling you, you would know that that is Belara. That is her character. She specifically says she's never been in a relationship, essentially. So this would be new to her. But if you played the game, then you would know that, okay, this makes sense why you're nervous to say this. But no, you have people who literally doesn't play the game and they don't know why she's doing what she's doing. And that is all I need to know, that you don't play the game, because if you knew Belara and her character, that would make sense. But that's all I'm going to say on the story. The story was great. I felt like it was reminiscent of God of War 3. I'm just going to quickly touch on the quests in the game. The questing system, in my opinion, was good, but I felt like when it came to the side characters and the side quests, there were too many quests back to back. I remember one instance where I was just trying to clear up some side stories, and I'm not someone who puts off the side quests. If I saw a side quest, I would do it right then and there. But then later on, I was at a point where there were so many quests coming in that I spent 4 hours straight just doing side content. This was, to be fair, right before the end of the game. I felt like the spacing of the quests could have been better. You could maybe wrap up someone's story arc early in the game, and then you wrap up someone's story arc maybe midway through the game, someone at 75%, but no, it just bombards you with everything all at once. There's side character quests along with open world quests, and I feel like the open world quest is what really made the game feel too overwhelming when it comes to the quest. When it comes to the main story, I felt like you were putting that off for a lot of time just to do side quests. And I don't know if you can go back and do side quests after the game ends, because I completed everything, but it says you won't be able to complete quests after. I assume it just puts you back before the final event, so maybe you could redo them, I don't know. But my problem with the quests were the spacing. With that being said, I'm going to wrap up this review, and I'm just going to say my review is an 8 out of 10 on this game. I feel like this game is a good example of what you should do. It had quests similar to The Witcher. It had side quests similar to any Mass Effect game. The gameplay to me felt like God of War. The story itself felt like God of War 3, which is a great game. And when I take all these things, factoring them in, this is a great game. This is a very, very good game. And I spent 61 hours on it, 100%ing it, doing all of the quests. I even went back like a mission because I missed a side quest that disappeared after I completed the story, so I reloaded that. If you look at this game and you are judging it just off of Taash's story, which I think everyone can agree, if you don't want politics in your game, her story is trash. And I agree with you. I don't want politics in my game. But that was 1 or 2 hours of content in a 61-hour game. I'm not going to let that 2 hours affect my overall experience of the game. The sword combat felt really great. The dodging system, the parrying system, the combat made me want to play more. I feel like in hindsight, many years from now, if not months, people are going to look at this game and they're going to think it's a good game. It is a good game, and I'm not someone who's taking it lightly, comparing it to God of War, comparing the questing to The Witcher 3 or Mass Effect. It is a good game if you look past 1 or 2 hours of gameplay. If you don't like Taash, just don't do her story. I don't know if she dies in the end. If if you don't do her quest, but I know that's one of the prerequisites of keeping people alive, of doing their quests. So maybe she dies, maybe you get satisfaction out of that, I don't know. But I thought this was a good game, and I would recommend this game to other people. The people that you see that will be hating on this game are going to be people who are just parroting others. People who are living in an echo chamber of the very people that they dislike on the left, saying that they have some hive mind. And I'm someone who doesn't even align with the left. I don't align with the right. But I'm looking at this from an unbiased point of view, and this is a good game.